In this module, we'll talk about all of the various components of a lexical entry, all of the things that must be learned by a learner in order for them to be able to fully native-likely use a lexical entry and understand it in all of the occasions where it will be used. So the various contents would be to first introduce the idea of form, meaning, and use in a language structure. We'll talk about some different aspects of form like orthography, phonology, and the lexical. We'll talk about meaning, the various core meanings and different polysemous or polysemic meanings for a word. We'll talk about the idea of collocations, the combinations of words in which they appear, connotations, the things that come to mind besides the actual denotation, and genre and register constraints on the use of any given lexical entry. Okay, so form, meaning, use. This three-way division was invented by Diane Larson Freeman, and basically it says in order to know any kind of language structure, you need to know its form, its meaning, and its use. In this module, we're particularly thinking about how this would apply to a lexical entry, some morpheme or some group of morphemes that have an undecomposable meaning. So the form would be how a piece of language looks or sounds, how it's written or how it's spoken. The meaning would be what sort of comes to mind, what images come to mind with that piece of language when you hear that piece of language or when you read that piece of language. Then the use would be this sort of social information. Who would use that piece of language? Who would use it with whom? And in what kind of settings? And all of that together would sort of make up this lexical entry. It would have these three different aspects. So let's take an example of the English word thanks, which although it's kind of made of two morphemes, thank plus a plural s, and practice, thanks is sort of treated as a single deployable, a single kind of launchable word. And so we might want to think of this as actually being a single lexical entry. So it's spelled Thanks. It's pronounced with the phonemes th and a and nga and k and s. The meaning, what's the little video that would come to mind? What would play in sort of the imagery in my head or the emotions in my head when I heard this? I would get a video of like someone did something for someone else, and that act of having something done for them would make that person happy. It would induce some sort of pleasant feeling or pleasant state. So whatever video would be playing exactly when I hear the word thanks, that's the sort of situation that comes into my mind. Those things would sort of have to be true in order for thanks to really work. And then when would this be used? Well, we can think about this in contrast to other forms like thank you very much, thank you so much, like oh my gosh, you shouldn't have. Those would all be other things that I could use in that same movie sort of to illustrate that same sort of imagery. But in this case, if the people who are speaking with each other or writing to each other know each other very well, or they have an informal relationship, or if the favor, the thing being done, wasn't a very big thing, if it was an older person doing it to a younger person, then thanks might be appropriate. If these conditions weren't met, then it might be better to do thank you, or thank you very much, or thank you so much. So basically the form, the meaning, and the use would all have to be in place in order for this lexical entry. So all of that information would be sort of stored in the file for that lexical entry. You might have one of these folders would be the form information, the meaning information, and the use information. Okay, so orthography, obviously in most languages the orthography will be obvious and it won't change all that much. So in this case, the orthography, the part of the form for that would be Thanks. But there's other options for orthography, even in languages that use the Latin alphabet. For some learners, they might want to know the Braille forms for those letters, or the shorthand forms, or the cursive forms for those letters. Maybe even sign language, signing the various ASL signs. Each one has a letter that you could actually do, and then you could retrieve the spelling of that word by seeing someone using sign language to sign out the letters. Some languages, though, the orthography wouldn't be quite as obvious. So in Mandarin Chinese, for example, I can write the word ma, which means mother, as this using the simplified characters or the more traditional version. I could represent the sound in Roman letters with the Waite-Giles transcription, MA with the number 1, or with pinyin, which is used more in mainland China, MA with this dash over the top, or bapamuffa, which is really only used in Taiwan these days, And this would represent the letter M, this would represent the vowel A, and then the fact that there's no tone marking is a clue that it is actually a high tone, this A. So there's actually 5 different ways of orthographically representing that one lexical entry in Mandarin. Phonologically, the underlying phonemes in a given dialect must be learned. So actually, in this sort of setting, there's some people who this would be made of the A vowel. They would think that the vowel in thanks is the same as the vowel in cat or can't, thanks. Other people might say, oh no, that first vowel in this word thanks would be the same as the vowel in the word gate or ain't. And so thanks, thanks, thanks. So these are both possible phonemes that would underlie that. Whenever there's allomorphy, there can actually be more than one phonemic representation as well that would be associated with that same lexical entry. So one example we've seen already is this plural allomorphs in English. We have a single plural morpheme, but it can either be made of the phoneme s after voiceless sound, after it can be pronounced as is, after s, sh, z, zh, and it would be pronounced as z anywhere else. Construct could actually have that T there or could have it gone if you're going to say construction. So construct something or construction worker where there is no T anymore. So there's 2 allomorphs for that morpheme. The Russian word which means voice would be golos. And so if it's the stress is on the first syllable, it would be this aw vowel. But if it's only a secondary stress, or if I'm attaching something else, it would be galasa. I also have a root marok, which would be one form, one allomorph for the word stamp. Another allomorph for the stamp would be just mark, like marca, or markach. So this vowel could be there or could not be there. These are 2 different allomorphs of that same morpheme. And then if there was any allophonic rule that would apply on all the words of the language, I wouldn't need to necessarily learn that as part of learning a lexical item. It wouldn't be lexical entry specific information. So this is an unusual pattern I would have to sort of memorize when I learn that plural morpheme s. This is sort of an unusual alternation that I might want to learn, or this one especially is very irregular. I would probably have to learn it whenever I learned the word for stamp. But something like how in English, if I have an n morpheme and a k morpheme, the n always gets pronounced as nga. That will happen on any word. It goes all the way across the language. So it's not something I have to learn lexical entry by lexical entry. I can just learn that in general for the language as I learn the phonology, the pronunciation patterns of the language itself. It's not unique to one lexical item. The lexical grammar would be sort of like, what are the larger phrases or what kinds of patterns of sentence could this new lexical entry appear in? So let's think about a new lexical entry, defend. There's a lot of different frameworks or different patterns in which it can appear, and each would sort of slightly change the meaning. So someone defends someone from something. So like the lawyer defended me from the accusation. Something defends someone from someone. This is a little bit different act of defending. The wall defends the Chinese from the Mongols, like the Great Wall of China. Someone defends something to someone. I defended my argument to my advisor. Or I could just say someone defends something. I defended my thesis, or the army defended the city. And I wouldn't need any preposition or anything like that at all. So all of these would be a different, what we call an argument structure, sort of a different pattern of what kinds of words must or cannot appear together with one. So this sort of grammar which goes out from a lexical entry and imposes restrictions or opens up possibilities for what other words could appear would be part of the lexical grammar. And this is sort of idiosyncratic. It's not very predictable. I wouldn't necessarily know which patterns are possible with defend automatically. I would have to learn this from examples or learn this by researching. Things like the presence or the absence of an object. Could this verb take an object or not? Whether the subject of this verb could or must or cannot be a living thing, or could it be an inanimate object? The same would be true for the object of this verb. Is the thing this verb is being done to, must it be alive? Can it be alive? Can't it be alive? What prepositions might occur with a verb or an adjective? Like an adjective like I'm sorry, I'm sorry for that, but I can't say I'm sorry to that. I can say I'm sorry about that, but I cannot say I'm sorry of that. I can say we defended the city against them, we defended the city for them, we defended the city from them, we defended the city with them. And in each of those cases, it would be a little bit different meaning. But I can't say I defended the city to them. I guess I could if they're attacking the reputation of that city and I'm trying to say, no, it's a great city. We defended the city over them, or we defended the city about them. Those I don't think I can get them to work. So there's rules about this verb defend, what sorts of prepositions can and cannot appear together with it. If we also think another aspect of lexical grammar is sort of what forms this root can take within what we call the lemma. These three forms, defends, defended, defending, these are sort of predictable forms for any verb in English. You can have walks, walked, walking, cooks, cooked, cooking, defends, defended, defending. So these parts are predictable. You would assume that they would be there. But the existence of defender or defendant or defense, these are unpredictable. I would just have to memorize that these are possible forms or sort of possible variants which can be derived from this root defend. I would also have to memorize that for some reason I can have construction and construct, but I cannot have a defension for defense. I can have a mentor and a mentee, but I cannot have a defendee, even though I have a defender. The defendee would actually be defendant. This is unpredictable knowledge. It would just have to be memorized. I would have to learn all of this when I learn this word defend. In terms of the meaning, there's core meanings, so what the little video that would come to mind. We think about what are the most prototypical or the most usual examples or instances where this word defend might be used, or what features, what exactly would have to be true in order to use the word defend instead of maybe some synonyms or related words like to protect or to keep. So my computer from viruses, I can say I defended my computer from viruses. It might be a little bit better to say I protected my computer from viruses. I kept my computer from viruses. Well, something can keep my computer from viruses. That works a little bit better. So I would have to, no, this is maybe not the most prototypical meaning for defend or occasion for use, but I defended the goal from the opposing team. That's actually a pretty strong use for defend. I would prefer defend over maybe protect. Protected the goal from the opposing team sounds a little bit strange. Kept the goal from the opposing team sounds very strange, even though the name of that job is a goalkeeper. Defended the blood cells from viruses. Maybe I would say protect the blood cells from viruses, but kept probably wouldn't work here. Defended China from the Mongols sounds better to me than maybe protected China from the Mongols. Kept China from the Mongols sounds a little bit strange. Defended the Constitution from the erosion of rights. Maybe protect would sound equally good as defend here. Defended my family from uncertainty. I might say protect or keep here. Kept would be a little bit better. Defended my shirt from getting wet sounds very impossible. Protected my shirt from getting wet if it was something like a plastic covering, or kept my shirt from getting wet if it was someone. So all of these would be sort of restrictions on what exactly would count, what would be an appropriate occasion to use defend. And I would sort of have to memorize this, or at least come to know this over time. That would be part of what it would mean to actually know this new lexical entry defend. It seems to me there's got to be some party that wants to do damage, whether that's a person like the Mongols, or whether that's a thing like a virus or the rain. There's got to be some object or some place that stands to be damaged, whether that's China or the Constitution or my soccer team. And there's got to be some other party who's attempting to prevent the damage or to stop that from happening. If those conditions are met, it's a good opportunity to use defend, but there might be cases where protect is more of a preferred, or even kept is more of the preferred usage. We talked also already about polysemy, the idea that a single lexical entry can have more than one meaning, some of which are derived by metaphor or kind of extended. So defending a city is the core meaning of defend, that you actually have these people with weapons protecting a city from getting attacked. Defending one's honor is metaphorically derived from that, but it's okay. So we could have a knight who defended the city. in the same way that they defended the city, they might imagine that there's this metaphor of their honor or their reputation, and they're also trying to protect that from people who are attacking them. And then even more metaphorical, even more extended away from the core meaning would be this idea of defending an idea, that I have this imaginary idea that I'm trying to protect it from people who are not physically trying to attack it, but just coming up with counter arguments. So this would be a polysemous word. It would have more than one kind of meaning. Thanks, it might seem like thanks there's only one meaning, like thanks for giving us X, but if I say something like thanks for giving us extra homework, you would sort of have to know the real world context to mean that here, in this case, thanks doesn't actually mean the person is happy about it. This is actually sarcasm. So the person is probably unhappy about it. Like they don't actually express joy at having the extra homework. Oh, thanks for giving us extra homework. That would be an extended meaning from this. And in this case, an ironic or a sarcastic meaning. We could see that with that Twitter hashtag, thanks Obama, that some people were genuinely expressing thanks, some people were blaming him, and some people were making fun of the people who blamed him, and so ended up genuinely expressing thanks. This can all be very complicated and very subtle. If you think of maybe a more straightforward example, to look sharp, that could either mean you appear intelligent, wow, these students look like they're really sharp, or be ready to act. If I'm throwing a football and say, hey, look sharp, that means, hey, be ready to catch the ball, or these people look sharp, you look sharp. This could mean not that you appear smart, but that you appear well-dressed. So all of these different meanings, they're metaphorically related to each other, but you would have to know the exact context to figure out what one is being used. Collocations would be another part of what I'd have to know. This is actually moving away from meaning and into that use category. What sorts of phrases or what sorts of contexts does a lexical entry, a new morpheme, usually appear in? So we have pre-collocations, which would be words which would appear to the left in a left to right writing system. So this is the pre-collocations for defend. What words often appear at least two words before defend? I'm able to defend, I successfully defend, I must defend, I'm trying to defend, I vigorously defend, I'm prepared to defend, I'm ready to defend, I have the ability to defend, I'll try to defend, I'll protect and defend, the officials defended, the lawyer defended. All of these would be sort of examples that in order to really know how defend is used in everyday conversation, I would want to know that these are the things that strongly co-occur with it. They appear together, they're co-located. That's what a collocate is. And also, what kinds of things normally are after the word defend? Defend against is by far the most common. Defend their something, or defending themselves. We see a lot of this, themselves, himself, herself, ourselves, myself, yourself. So you have to know that part of what it means to know the word defend is to know that it's defend oneself. Defend oneself against something. That's a very common occasion to use this word. Defend the champion, defend the country, defend my rights, defend my decision, defend my title. This would be in sports, defend the position, defend the Constitution, defend my freedom, defend my actions. With thanks, we see things like, okay, thanks is very common, or give thanks, special thanks, okay, thanks, hi, thanks, I'm doing fine, thanks. And we even have thanks again, so people say, thanks, thanks, they would double it up. Giving thanks, here we have some of these names, which are probably an artifact of the corpus that was being analyzed here. Gentlemen, welcome, and thanks, that those would appear together. Express thanks, gee, thanks. And then after the word thanks, thanks for this, thanks very much, or thanks very much. Both much and very occur a lot. Thanks so much, thanks a lot. Thanks for joining, thanks for being, thanks for having, thanks for coming, thanks for watching, thanks again. Thanks in part, thanks for taking, thanks for calling. So in order to really know everything that a native speaker would know about this word thanks, I would need to know a lot about what kinds of combinations is it most natural to use it in. How would I want to express that idea? What situations is it natural to use the word thanks or to use the word defend to express a meaning? Connotations is another piece of the puzzle. If I think of the word defend, I might think of soccer players or knights and castles. These might be the first things that jump to mind. But if I think of other aspects, defenders, I might actually think about defenders of the galaxy, or defenders, I might think of it more as like a football team or a hockey player, or I might think of it as firemen or maybe even soldiers. Defendants, I definitely think of law, maybe public defenders then. And then defenses, maybe I think of emotional defenses. Maybe I think of a line of forts in World War I. Maybe I think of a set of arguments that will definitely convince you of what I believe. So all of these would be different connotations. Pictures or extra imagery that jump to mind that sort of come along with this word. Finally, there's genre and register constraints, which would be an important part of what has to be learned with a lexical entry. In what social domains would I usually expect to hear the word thanks or to hear the word defend? Maybe for defend, I would hear this in sports contexts or in legal contexts or in academic contexts. I might think that this is a slightly more educated word. It might slightly correlate in my mind with higher levels of education. I can't think of any real regional variations or social variations for who would use defend, but thanks I actually might. It might really depend on your social class, which social groups you belong to, and certain regions might use it more often than others.